They say home is where the heart is. But what happens when your heart lives behind gates, guarded by greed? This isn't just a story about a corrupt HOA. It's about what happens when quiet people are pushed too far, when the rules stop protecting and start controlling, when the ones meant to serve become tyrants in name tags and clipboards. But in Raven Oaks, one man decided enough was enough. And when the system came knocking on the wrong door, it found something it didn't expect, a fight it couldn't win. This is the story of Logan Harper, state trooper, son, neighbor, and the man who stood up when everyone else was told to sit down. The first thing Logan Wyatt noticed about Raven Oaks was how quiet it was. Tucked at the foot of the Colorado Rockies, the gated community sat like a well-manicured secret. Perfect lawns, identical mailboxes, American flags fluttering in symmetry, and not a single misplaced trash bin in sight. The kind of place real estate brochures called idyllic. The kind of place Logan had once thought didn't exist, until he moved in. He hadn't wanted to be there. Not really. But after his wife died in a car accident 2 years ago, and his teenage daughter Ellie stopped smiling altogether, he needed out of the city. Away from sirens, away from the endless noise of his past life as a federal agent. Ellie needed calm. Logan needed silence. Raven Oaks had offered both. Or so it seemed. They'd only been living in the neighborhood 3 weeks when the first letter arrived. It was a warm Friday morning. Logan was sipping coffee on the porch, watching Ellie feed the dog, when he spotted the envelope poking out of the mailbox. White, official, bearing the embossed seal of the Raven Oaks Homeowners Alliance. While he opened it with one hand, casually, expecting a welcome packet or maybe a community event invite. Instead, it read, Notice of Violation, Parcel Number 71. Infraction, Mailbox, Paint Chipping, Non-compliant with Section 4, Subsection C of the Community Appearance Standards. Fine, $125. Payable within 14 days to avoid penalty interest. Logan blinked, then read it again. Paint chipping? The damn mailbox had a single scratch on the side, barely visible unless someone had gone looking for it, which meant someone had. Everything okay? Ellie asked. He nodded, folding the paper in half. Yeah, just HOA stuff. She didn't press. She hadn't pressed about anything lately. Logan didn't think much of it, until the second notice came. Then the third. A week later, he found a fine taped to his front door for visible garden hose not coiled to regulation. Then one for parking his work truck, an unmarked black SUV, within direct line of sight of a main thoroughfare. It felt petty. Ridiculous. But then he noticed something stranger. At night, he'd see flashes of red light reflecting off the windows. Infrared motion sensors. Cameras, sometimes mounted under street lamps, sometimes peeking from neighbors' trees. And the people, well, they didn't smile, not really. They waved, yes, polite, rehearsed gestures, but never quite looked him in the eye. The only one who seemed remotely real was Miles Chan, a retired engineer 2 houses down, thin, bookish, and soft-spoken. One afternoon, Logan spotted Miles struggling with a ladder near his garage. He offered to help. Miles hesitated, then whispered, You're new, so let me give you the only advice that matters. Keep your head down. Vera Langford sees everything. Vera? Logan asked. Miles glanced at a blinking lamppost camera, then back at Logan. She runs the HOA. Think of her as the mayor, judge, and warden of Raven Oaks. Logan tried to laugh it off, but a chill settled over him. He'd come here for peace, but something was very, very off. Logan hadn't planned on getting involved. He really hadn't. But a few days after the warning from Miles, something happened that pushed him over the edge. It was late, past midnight. Logan had been reviewing old case files on his laptop, a habit he hadn't quite shaken since leaving the bureau. The air was crisp, windows cracked open just enough to let the smell of pine drift in. Ellie was finally asleep upstairs. The world was, for once, Quiet. Then came the knock. 3 quick raps on the door, followed by the whir of an engine and spinning gravel. Logan grabbed the Glock he kept in the drawer and moved toward the door cautiously, instincts kicking in like muscle memory. He opened it slowly, expecting a package thief, a prank, maybe a wrong address. Instead, he found another HOA violation notice duct taped to the front door. This time, infraction. Use of exterior lighting past community hours, 11 p.m. Fine. $200. Logan stared into the darkness beyond the porch, then down the street. A golf cart was already halfway to the main road, its tiny, orange beacon blinking mockingly in the dark. Stanley. He'd seen the man before. Middle-aged, heavy-set, always wore the same pale blue HOA community compliance vest, drove around like a mall cop on steroids. Logan had caught glimpses of him taking photos, inspecting flower beds, measuring fences with a tape ruler. People called him Stanley the Snitch, but never to his face. Not even Miles. The next morning, Logan went straight to the HOA office. It was a small, glass-paneled building tucked between the tennis courts and the gated pool, designed to look inviting. But inside it was cold, sterile. A faint scent of lavender tried to mask the stale, bureaucratic air. And at the front desk sat Vera Langford. She was in her late 60s, elegant in a brittle sort of way. Immaculate white bob, pearl earrings, a cardigan that looked like it cost more than Logan's truck. She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. "Mr. Wyatt," she said before he even introduced himself. "We've been expecting you." "Have you?" Logan's voice was calm, even. Vera gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Coffee? Or would you prefer we just get to the point?" Logan sat. "Let's get to the point." She folded her hands. "The notices you've received are standard policy. Raven Oaks has strict expectations of its residents. Standards are what keep property values high and community trust intact." "Your standards include stalking people at midnight?" Logan asked, raising an eyebrow. Vera didn't blink. "Our compliance team works on a rotating schedule. Stanley takes his job very seriously." "I noticed." She smiled faintly. "If I may be blunt, Mr. Wyatt, you're new. You haven't quite acclimated. You park your vehicle in view of the main boulevard. Your daughter plays music loud enough to rattle window panes. And your porch light is motion sensor, which triggers at all hours. Small things, of course, but small things add up." Logan leaned forward. "Let's be blunt then. You're targeting people. I've seen the patterns. Elderly neighbors, families with kids. You drown them in fees until they move." Vera's smile disappeared. "I suggest you be careful with your accusations." "Or what?" Her tone dropped. "You may have been law enforcement, Mr. Wyatt, but this is my jurisdiction. And I assure you the rules here are enforceable, legally." Logan stood. "So was slavery once." Vera's eyes narrowed. "Good day, Mr. Wyatt." Outside, the sun was too bright, too clean, too perfect. Logan walked back home in silence, stomach churning. That night, he called Maggie, a former FBI colleague, now working in white-collar crime investigation in Denver. "I think I've stumbled onto something," he said. "It's more than just HOA overreach." He paused. "I think it's extortion. Maybe even organized fraud." And just like that, the investigation began. Logan knew Maggie wouldn't take much convincing. She was sharp, methodical, and had the kind of tenacity that scared even the most seasoned crooks. When he sent her the violation notices, a few scanned property records, and some photos of Stanley prowling the neighborhood like a mall cop on patrol, her reply was short. "I'm in." A week later, she arrived at Raven Oaks disguised as a curious potential buyer. Her cover? Newly retired biotech executive looking for peace and quiet. Her platinum blonde wig, designer bag, and fake Southern accent were flawless. She toured the neighborhood with a real estate agent and got just close enough to Vera Langford's office to install 2 covert recording devices. Logan watched from a distance. That night, Maggie parked at his place, kicked off her heels, and pulled out a laptop the size of a lunchbox. "This place reeks of coordinated racketeering," she said, tapping on the keyboard. "There's a paper trail a mile wide." She showed Logan what she'd found. The HOA violations weren't just about enforcing cleanliness or community standards. They were being used as a weapon, issued disproportionately to elderly homeowners, single parents, and military veterans. Dozens of residents had either sold under duress or had been coerced into settlement agreements to avoid legal action. And almost every one of those properties, snapped up by a company called Cascade Heritage Solutions, LLC, a ghost company, registered to a P.O. box in Nevada, owned by no one, at least on paper. "That's a shell corp if I've ever seen one," Maggie said, zooming in on a PDF of a title transfer. "And here's the kicker. Guess who sits on the Cascade board as a silent consultant?" She tapped her screen. "Vera Langford." Logan sat back, jaw tight. "She's using HOA authority to strip people of their homes, then flipping them for profit." "Exactly," Maggie said. "And she's not alone. She's got a board, a lawyer, and a financial partner." "Who?" Maggie's face turned grim. "Guy named Martin Gilliam. He's been investigated twice by the SEC. Real estate fraud, money laundering, coercive settlements. But nothing ever stuck." Logan's blood chilled. Gilliam was no amateur. He was the type of man who knew how to destroy people with paperwork and never leave fingerprints. A corporate hitman. They needed more. The next few days were a flurry of movement. Maggie and Logan mapped out HOA meeting schedules, resident interactions, board member patterns. They cross-checked bank transactions from the HOA's maintenance fund, dues that homeowners paid monthly, and found suspicious withdrawals made on the same days homes were foreclosed or sold under pressure. Some of the money went to landscaping companies that didn't exist. Others were labeled as administrative reimbursements. But the largest chunk? Routed through Cascade Heritage and into shell accounts overseas. Logan looked at the numbers. "This isn't a neighborhood scam. It's a full-blown criminal enterprise." "And they've been doing it for years," Maggie added. "We just caught them mid-cycle." But even with the data, they needed one thing more: a smoking gun, a moment, a voice. Something that proved intent that came on a rainy Thursday. Maggie's recording device, hidden inside a fake smoke detector in the HOA conference room, picked up a conversation between Vera and Stanley. Logan listened with headphones, heart pounding. Vera: "I don't care if she's a widow, she's behind on dues. File the lien." Stanley: "She's 83. Vera: "Then she can call her kids, or sell. Either way, that house goes on the market by June. Then." Stanley: "And what if Wyatt keeps poking around?" Vera: "We handle it, quietly. He's got a daughter, doesn't he?" Logan froze. The mention of Ellie was like an electric jolt to his spine. Maggie saw his hands clench into fists. "We need to go to the state attorney now," she said. "No," Logan said quietly. "We need to set a trap. Something they can't wiggle out of." She looked at him. "You're thinking like a Fed again." Logan didn't smile. "I'm thinking like a father." Logan Wyatt had been in dangerous situations before. Undercover drug busts, standoffs, high-speed chases. But nothing rattled him quite like hearing his daughter's name spoken like a threat. Vera Langford had crossed a line. And now, it was time to make her pay. The plan wasn't simple, but it was clean. With Maggie's technical expertise and Logan's connections from his law enforcement days, they set the wheels in motion. Logan called an old friend at the California Department of Justice, ADA Renee Lynn, a relentless prosecutor who'd made a name going after white-collar criminals who thought they were untouchable. Renee didn't hesitate. "I've been hearing whispers about HOA abuse cases for months," she said during their first off-the-record call. "If you've got hard evidence, we can open an investigation. But we'll need one thing: intent to defraud, real time, on record." Logan had a plan for that. 3 days later, Maggie staged a community meeting under the guise of forming a homeowner advocacy group. She booked the small, public library meeting room down the street from Raven Oaks and distributed anonymous flyers around the neighborhood. Tired of fines? You're not alone. They expected 10 people. Over 30 showed up. Single moms, elderly couples, veterans, residents who had been quietly harassed, drained by fines, or threatened with liens. One woman, Mrs. Ortega, a retired teacher in her 70s, broke down in tears as she described how Vera's board fined her over $3,000 in a single month, just for having mismatched patio furniture and a non-compliant mailbox. This was never about appearances, Logan told the group. It was about power, and now we're going to take it back. The residents agreed to be part of a formal complaint. Maggie handed out release forms. Logan assured them their identities would be protected. Now came the next step, baiting Vera into exposing herself. The setup took place at Unit Number 47, a rental property that had recently gone up for sale. With permission from the owner, who had just moved to Colorado and had his own horror story with Vera, Logan staged a fake homeowner. His name was Alex Reeve, an actor friend from Logan's past work with undercover operations. They fitted the unit with hidden cameras, audio recorders, and even a live feed back to Maggie's laptop. The goal was to capture Vera making an offer, off the books with clear threats or coercion. The bait? A fabricated HOA debt of $8,500, just enough to get her attention. Sure enough, 2 days after the debt notice went out, Vera sent Stanley with an envelope. Inside was a letter stating that if the owner didn't respond within 48 hours, legal action would begin. Maggie flagged the language. There were no actual legal grounds cited, just vague threats about HOA bylaws and community destabilization. It was illegal and perfect. Alex, playing the nervous homeowner, called the number listed. Vera picked up personally. "We're willing to work with you," she said. "Let's talk about options." Logan watched the video feed from the next room as Vera arrived, dressed sharp and smiling like a politician. Alex greeted her with feigned confusion and anxiety, exactly the kind of demeanor Vera liked to prey on. The conversation escalated. Vera circled the topic, then dropped the pitch. "Look, we can avoid the foreclosure and all the stress that comes with it. I know a buyer, very private, very fast. You sign, we make the paperwork disappear. No one needs to know." "What about the HOA fines?" Alex asked nervously. "Gone," Vera said, with a reassuring pat on the table. "It's all paperwork. All you have to do is sign." The camera caught it all. Her face, her voice, the fake buyer agreement, the admission of wiping records in exchange for the sale. She even mentioned Cascade by name. "They're reliable," she said. "We've done dozens of these transfers." Logan clenched his jaw. "You just hung yourself," he muttered under his breath. When Vera left, smiling and none the wiser, Logan called Ada Lynn. "We got it," he said. "Everything you asked for." "Good," she replied. "Now let's bring this house of cards down." Vera Langford had built her empire on intimidation, manipulation, and fear. For years, her word had been law inside Raven Oaks. But now, something felt off. People no longer looked at her with wary respect. They glanced away, whispered behind her back. Even Stanley, her ever-loyal enforcer, had started hesitating before carrying out her orders. She could feel it, like a hairline crack forming in a dam. And cracks had a way of bursting. What Vera didn't know was that the dam had already broken. After the sting operation at Unit Number 47, ADA Renee Lynn moved fast. With evidence in hand, recorded conversations, forged documents, and verified testimonies from multiple residents, she assembled a task force. The investigation officially transitioned from civil to criminal. The case was no longer about HOA harassment, Now it was racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy to defraud elderly homeowners. Logan had become the center of the operation, passing information from residents to the task force, all while pretending to remain an angry but quiet homeowner. Meanwhile, Maggie worked behind the scenes, monitoring activity from Vera's office server through a back door she'd slipped into Stanley's laptop weeks earlier. One night, she called Logan. "They're wiping files," she said. "Vera's deleting HOA violation histories, payment ledgers, anything that could tie her to the shell company." "How much do we lose?" Logan asked. "Not much. I already copied the drive 3 days ago." Logan smiled. "Then let her dig her own grave." But Vera wasn't going down without a fight. When she received word that the HOA's legal counsel had resigned without warning, she knew something was wrong. Then came the letter, an official notice from the state attorney's office requesting her presence for an interview regarding HOA financial irregularities. Her palms went cold. She called her contacts. 2 of them refused to answer. One even blocked her number. Then, in the middle of the night, someone spray-painted "thief" across her garage door. She called the cops, but they didn't show for hours. When they did, the officer barely hid his disdain. "You might want to get a camera, ma'am," he said flatly. "Whole neighborhood's fed up." Vera was losing control. And then came the final blow. On a rainy Friday morning, Vera arrived at the HOA office to find it swarming with unmarked cars. A man in a navy suit stepped forward the moment she parked. "Vera Langford?" he asked, holding up a badge. "Special Agent Curtis, DOJ Fraud Division. We have a warrant to search the premises." Vera didn't answer, just stood, soaked as agents entered the building she once ruled like a queen. Logan arrived minutes later, not as a bystander, but as an official witness and community liaison for the investigation. Vera's eyes locked on his. "You," she hissed. "This is your doing." "No," Logan replied calmly. "This is yours. I just stopped pretending not to see it." She lunged forward, furious, but was held back by 2 agents. Inside the office, they recovered everything Maggie had predicted: duplicate ledgers, fraudulent violation templates, escrow papers bearing the names of properties Vera had illegally claimed and sold. Even Stanley's confession came in quietly. He walked into the precinct the next morning, trembling, carrying a thumb drive and a handwritten letter. "She made me do it," he said, "all of it. I have proof." When he did, voice recordings Vera didn't know existed, ones that confirmed she had orchestrated threats, manipulated finances, and profited from coerced sales. It was over, but not for Logan. In the wake of the raid, residents flooded to his porch, some to thank him, others to finally share their own stories. People who hadn't spoken to one another in years now stood shoulder to shoulder, rebuilding what Vera's regime had broken. Mrs. Ortega brought homemade empanadas, Merted. Chan offered to mow Logan's lawn for a month. Even Stanley's teenage daughter slipped a note into Logan's mailbox that read, "Thank you for helping my dad tell the truth." Logan didn't ask for recognition, but he knew now that the fight hadn't just been about fines or property lines. It had been about reclaiming dignity, protecting the vulnerable, and refusing to be bullied by corruption wrapped in bureaucracy. The air in Raven Oaks felt different, lighter, less watchful. It had been 2 weeks since federal agents raided the HOA office and escorted Vera Langford into a black SUV. Her mugshot made the evening news. Charges were stacked like firewood: wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy, elder exploitation, forgery, and obstruction of justice. The media called it the HOA scandal of the decade. But for the residents of Raven Oaks, it wasn't about headlines. It was about finally being free. On a clear Saturday morning, the community gathered on the front lawn of the old HOA building. The structure, once a symbol of fear and surveillance, now stood empty. Its windows boarded, its locks sealed by federal notice. Logan Harper, wearing jeans and a faded flannel, stood before a makeshift podium. Beside him was Maggie, holding a clipboard, and a new face, Judge Elaine Porter, who had lived in the neighborhood quietly for over a decade, now stepping in as interim moderator until a legal counsel could appoint a new, accountable homeowners board. "We're not replacing Vera," Judge Porter said into the mic, her voice calm but firm. "We're building something new, transparent, fair, democratic." The crowd clapped, some cheered. Maggie stepped forward. "Every fine issued over the past 2 years will be reviewed. If you've paid money toward bogus violations, we'll fight to get that money back. If you lost property, we're working with the state to reverse those transfers." A few people wept silently in the back. "And as of today," Logan said, stepping up, "we're tearing down the surveillance cameras Vera installed without consent. You shouldn't feel watched in your own home." That got the loudest applause of the morning. Later that day, as volunteers gathered with ladders and power drills to start removing the security fixtures, Logan stood outside the HOA building, staring at the padlocked doors. He didn't want to step inside again. It still felt heavy, with everything Vera represented. But Maggie nudged him. "You should see this." Inside, she led him to what had once been Vera's private office. The walls were bare now, but the scent of old perfume still clung to the corners. On the desk sat an unopened envelope, marked only with Logan's name. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single, typed letter, short, clinical, emotionless. "Mr. Harper, you've always misunderstood power. Power isn't taken. It's maintained. People like me never really lose. VL." Logan read it twice, then folded it, slid it into his pocket, and tossed the envelope into the trash. "She's wrong," he said quietly. Over the following weeks, as legal proceedings against Vera and her co-conspirators continued, Logan became something he never expected: a community leader. He never ran for HOA president. In fact, he politely declined when asked. But he helped shape the charter that would guide its replacement. A rotating council, resident elected every 6 months, with no singular authority and open financial books. Maggie was voted onto the first council by a landslide. So was Mr. Chan, a local contractor who offered to fix neighborhood fences at cost. Even Stanley, after a long and public apology, joined the maintenance subcommittee. Redemption, it seemed, was also part of the healing. Then came the letters, from other neighborhoods, other towns, other victims. Word had spread about Raven Oaks. People who lived under similarly corrupt HOAs reached out, asking how they did it, asking for help, asking if it was even possible to fight back. Maggie started a website. Logan began replying to letters in the evenings. One woman from Arizona wrote, "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for proving that people can win." One night, Logan sat on his porch, a mug of black coffee in hand, Duke resting at his feet. The stars were bright over Raven Oaks, brighter than he remembered them being before all of this began. Maggie joined him, her hair messy from working with the new garden committee. "You're smiling," she said, handing him a cookie. "Didn't think you knew how." "I didn't think it was possible," he admitted. "I thought when Vera took the cruiser, when she had my mom's name on that violation list, I thought I'd have to burn it all down just to start over." "Turns out," she said, "you just had to show people what the truth looked like." They sat in silence, the kind that speaks of peace, not absence. "Think she meant what she said?" Maggie asked eventually. "Who?" "Vera. About never really losing?" Logan took a long sip from his mug, then shook his head. "She lost the moment people stopped being afraid." The next morning, a new banner hung across the park pavilion. "Welcome to Raven Oaks, where community comes first." Below it, kids chased each other with paper airplanes. Parents laughed over coffee, and Stanley stood awkwardly at the grill, flipping hot dogs and trying not to burn them. For the first time in a long time, Raven Oaks felt like a place people actually wanted to live. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come with sirens or headlines. Sometimes it's just a neighborhood getting its soul back.